Hey, Katie, it is great to have you here today.
Hi, Jill. It's great to be here.
So glad to chat with you. We spoke over the phone and I just love everything you're about. I think it's going to give the audience today just such a nice perspective and a realistic perspective and an attainable one, which is all, so important.
Thank you.
So let's begin a little bit. Let's tell the audience just a little bit about yourself because I really feel like your story is kind of it's kind of the foundation for all of this.
Right.
And it's a good story. So anyway, let's start with a little bit about you and then we'll get into some of the other, things.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Katie. I was originally an Army officer. I went to West Point. I graduated from West Point in 2009. And I knew that after that, my next 5 years would be as an Army officer. I deployed to Afghanistan. I worked at the Pentagon. I moved around a good bit. But my passion has always been decorating and fashion, even though I wore a uniform and lived in a barracks room for a long time. So in 2013, I was an Army captain. I was still on active duty. I was working at the Pentagon, and I just was itching to have a creative outlet after so many years of, just rigid, non-creative world.
Yeah.
And so I decided to start a blog, and I submitted photos of my little studio or loft apartment in Arlington. I submitted it to this bigger blog called The Every Girl, which was really popular at the time. And they would do home tours of 20-something-year-old women who, were sharing how they decorated and, just a very attainable, what it's like to, kind of be a single 20s, mid-20s girl.
Yeah.
And so I submitted those pictures, and then they wanted to publish it and share my story. So that was when I was like, oh, well, I guess I should probably start a blog to kind of, so that there would be something to link back to. And so that was when I started just sharing little DIYs. I mean, I was in a little apartment. There wasn't a whole lot I could do, but I started with little spray paint projects. And then just as I've moved over the years and we've changed different styles of homes, different locations. So once I left active duty, I married my husband, who was still in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved from Arlington, Virginia to Maryland in a really modern apartment. We had our son there. Then we moved to Kansas to 115-year-old Army quarters that had a butler's pantry and just the most beautiful ceilings you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Hawaii, where we had a 3-bedroom condo that was on the beach, very, lots of beige carpet. And we had 2 daughters there. And then my husband retired in 2020 from the Army, and that we moved back here to Arlington. So we've kind of come full circle. We rented a couple years while we were here, a 100-year-old craftsman. And then we just bought our first home ever. And it's a brand new townhouse. So the big goal for this phase of life was, how do we take this very builder grade box and make it our own and
Yours,
have
yeah.
it
So,
our
I
story.
mean, what I think, and we're gonna, once we get into this conversation, I think what's important for our audience too is you've moved so much. I mean, all those moves, like how frequent were they? Did you move every year, every 18 months, every
Oh
2
gosh,
years? It would vary.
it was, we were in Maryland for about 2 years. We were in Kansas for 11 months. We were in Hawaii for 3, which was a pretty long time for us. And
I was gonna say, it's probably not usually any longer than 2 years, but
no,
maybe
yeah,
there's an
2 to
exception.
3 is normally the max. And
Yeah.
so
So
you never know what you're going to be in. You don't know what the next place
adventure is
all the
gonna be.
places are so different.
Right. So I'm just going to speak for a minute to all those people that move from a big city to the suburbs, which is, a lot of people who listen to this podcast. It seems so overwhelming. And just to go from that apartment lifestyle to suburban home, but Katie has kind of been through it all. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have her on the podcast, because she's so seasoned with moving, and then moving to all these different architectural styles, but still trying to maintain what they love as a family. So we're gonna talk about that. So she also has, and we'll talk about it toward the end, but she has a website or a Instagram page and blog, Stripes and Whimsy. So
Yes. Sorry, I
that's
guess
now the
I
current
never actually
blog
said
that,
my name.
yeah, your Stripes and Whimsy.
Yeah.
So anyway, when you and I spoke, some of what you do has roots in your love for thrifting and DIY, which
Yes.
I completely relate to. And so I wanted to talk first about what are those roots and how did that come about, your love for that and using that within your home?
Okay. Well, I'll start with the thrifting side. I grew up. My my dad was an Army officer, so we moved around a good bit, and my both of my parents were both Army brats, so they moved around a good bit as kids. So they had, childhoods in Germany when their dads were stationed over there. And so I
Wow.
learned watching my grandmothers how they
Mhm.
collected things. And
Yep.
they were living like in particular, my maternal grandmother who passed away a few years ago. But every time I would go to their house, just every little thing told a story. And I mean, they were living in Germany in the 50s, not that much after World War II.
Mhm.
And so many people that were living there, they were just getting rid of all the old stuff. They kind of wanted to move forward.
Yeah.
And so my grandmother would find these beautiful old antique pieces on the side of the road in Germany. So
Mhm.
she was like, well, I'm taking this. And so she had those all through their moves. And now they're in my mom's home, and I've been able to end up with a couple of the pieces. And so just secondhand things just come with such a story.
Yeah.
And it's the thrill of finding it, the thrill of figuring out how to get it home. It just makes such a unique home. And so every time I would go visit my grandparents, once they finally settled down in the Atlanta area, whenever I would go see them, I mean, a big part of what my grandmother and I would do was go thrifting or go to an antique mall or something like that. And just, you don't even have to get anything, but just looking and finding the potential or finding the diamond in the rough
Yep.
among all the junk
Yeah.
it's just fun.
Yeah, I think I told you, because I grew up in the antique business, and my grandmother was very resourceful and sewed, and so I saw that, and my mom and I joke a lot because I got so much from my mother in terms of that, and we're like, sometimes it's just all about the hunt.
Oh, it
And
absolutely
I
is.
went to like an antique center a few weeks ago that I hadn't been to, and I wanted to check it out. And
Mhm.
I just went up and down every aisle. I went to every booth, and if I was hoping to find something, and I didn't quite that day, but honestly, I left there, and even without finding a treasure, which is always fun, it felt so good to just go and view and see everything, and
Right.
it's a place I know I can go back to, and
It's kind of
yeah,
therapeutic.
yeah, it was actually. So, it is kind of like this cool process, but then in the end, as far as what I would recommend to homeowners is, it's sort of nice to get something unique, one of a kind, like you said, something that has a story that you could learn the story.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just think it's really cool. So you still incorporate that in your home now, right? You
Oh,
might thrift
absolutely.
things
I
or
mean, if you can see the bookcases behind me,
yeah,
pretty much everything is secondhand.
yeah,
From the plates on the wall to the little knickknacks and
yep,
decorative, the ginger jars and things like that.
yep,
They help, especially with us. And I know a lot of people that I grew up in the Atlanta suburbs. And so I know what it's like when you're in a subdivision and so many of the houses were built up, as a development. And so there's
yeah,
a lot of similarities between the houses.
yeah,
And I mean, we're in a townhouse now where there's 9 other houses that we're attached to that all have the exact same footprint as us.
yep,
And I love the fact that, if I invite one of the neighbors over, it's going to be different than what they have,
right,
because I didn't just go to Home Goods or Crate and Barrel and just buy things. I've collected things. We have little things that tell stories, whether it's, just decorative objects, and most of our furniture is secondhand. I'm sitting at an antique secretary desk I found at a thrift store for $70.
Yep.
And it perfectly filled the space that we have here in our
Yep.
living room. And now it provides me a little place to work while my
Yeah.
kids are around like crazy. So, and I can tuck it away when I'm done.
And when it comes to furniture, the furniture, in decades past was built so much better, so much more solid. You will notice when you do try to get it home, it is so much heavier,
Yes.
and there's a reason for that. The things they build today don't compare.
Right.
And sometimes you find a piece, where you love the lines of it, the size of it, but maybe you don't want that color, and you can easily paint something up and give it a whole new life, which I also love to do.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so
Me
it's
too.
it's all really fun. So now let's get into the DIY part of it,
Okay.
because you have, I think, such a great approach to DIY. How you started it. You say DIY takes guts, which I love, and you say, "Don't wait for your husband." That part I love the best. So let's talk a little bit about DIY too, in combination with the thrifting.
Okay, yeah. So I first kind of dipped my toe in DIY with furniture, just because we've always been renting, and so I'm not going to do a big home transformation. I'm not going to replace a vanity in a rental apartment, but
Right.
I started just flipping furniture that I would
Mhm.
find, faux bamboo or Chinese Chippendale chairs, or
Mhm.
these these classic pieces that I had just learned about. And
Yeah.
so when I found the piece at a thrift store, I mean, I've always kept kind of a running list on my phone of what I was looking for.
Mhm.
And sure, you could just go on First Dibs or find, a reproduction,
Yeah.
but that's not as fun or as
No.
quite as satisfying. And so I've just slowly been able, over the course of 10 years, been able to check off a lot of the things that have been on my list. And so finding dressers, finding chairs, things like that. That was kind of how I got started,
Yeah.
and just decide. I mean, I had never fixed anything up before, but I did some research. I Googled how to use a sander. I bought a sander. Learned about, I started with spray paint, but then
Mhm.
eventually I invested in a paint sprayer so that I could choose custom colors at a
Yeah.
paint store. But you just have to go for it, and you learn along the way. And maybe, your first piece isn't going to be perfect, but you learn, and then your next piece will be better.
Right. So just like the hunt is fun with thrifting, do you find there's also a satisfaction in DIY? I mean, yes, you could be saving money, but there must be a certain satisfaction in it as well.
Yes.
Creative,
Yes.
and a feeling of accomplishment, maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's really, because my husband, he is a wonderful man, but he would never, our house would look exactly like it did the day we bought it if he was in charge.
Oh,
That's
totally.
not how his mind
Yeah.
works. And
No,
so for
most,
me,
yeah, I can relate to that.
yeah.
Your one story you had, if you don't mind telling it briefly, was
Okay.
about the plate rack.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell
Yes.
that
So,
story? Because I think that's a great
sure.
example of a DIY, and you were just like, "I'm not waiting, and this needs to get done."
Yes. So we live in a townhouse that is 18 feet wide. So that is the width of it. I'm here on this main floor. So this is the living room, which is attached to the kitchen, which is attached to the dining room. And there was this wall that was probably 4 feet wide, that all it had was like a digital security system screen. And we weren't even using that security system. And so I removed that, and we're kind of short on cabinet space. And I just kept staring at this blank wall that I knew had potential, but I wasn't quite sure how to go about it. And then finally, my husband was on a work trip, and I had all three kids home with me. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. This plate rack is happening right now this week. And so I just, I found a couple inspiration pictures. I adapted everything that I saw to our space, and went to Home Depot, and I got the wood, and I decided to go for it. And it is one of my favorite spots in the house because it's practical. I can
Mhm.
now I now have a place to store cutting boards and big platters and things like that. But it's also beautiful, because I'm able to show display our decorative
Yeah.
or our pretty practical things.
Yeah.
Old
Yeah,
plate
for
and
the audience, there's a picture of it on your Instagram, so I suggest you go and look at it because it's beautiful.
thank you.
And I love that you were like, I think, didn't you kind of surprise your husband when he got home to
Oh
be like,
yeah, when he came home, I mean, he said, he jokes, he's like, the way he finds out anything happened when he's been gone is just to check Instagram, because that's how he'll find out where we've been or what I've done to the house, like what furniture I've moved. And so, I mean, he knew it something had happened, but he loves it, and he's proud that I'll just go for stuff. He
no, I
thankfully
think that's great. And
he's
I
not the
love the
type
whole
of guy
thing.
that
Like, just
threatens
don't
to.
wait for your husband, just
Yeah.
get it done.
Yeah, just do it. I mean, so we have all these, boob lights
Yeah.
in this house, and they're everywhere. It's a 4-story house. I mean, here in Arlington, you kind of have to go vertical to get
Yes.
space. And so we just have a lot of stairs, a lot of hallways, and about 30 boob lights. And so I've slowly been, I mean, I learned how to do electrical a number of years ago, and changing out a light fixture is actually so much easier than you think, as long
Yeah.
as you're smart about it and safe about it. But
Right.
once you do one, then it's easy, and how, the basic formula. And so I've just been slowly swapping out all these lights over the course of the past 2 years, and we still
That's
have a couple
great.
left, but it's a process.
Yeah. Takes a
Just like
little
with
time.
decorating, it's a process, and it's best if you don't rush it.
Totally. So back to, we mentioned that you move so frequently, combined with, as you mentioned in the beginning, oftentimes you're getting a totally different style residence than
Mhm.
you had before.
Yes.
You have a real knack, I think, on purchasing your things that last. So, like, you don't feel like you have to replace them every time you move. Like, I think you were saying some other military families had that challenge where they would move and then they would feel like they couldn't take anything with them and the new place was so different. They had to buy all new. And you were like, no, we're not going to do that. So, let's talk about kind of like your little tips or secrets for moving along with everything in different geographical areas, but also different architectural surroundings.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, I mean, first off, I think if you buy what you truly love,
Mhm.
you can make it work most
That's my
anywhere. I mean,
mantra.
space dependent, of course.
Yes.
And just buying, everybody has their own different style. My style is pretty traditional. I like timeless pieces that, aren't too trendy. I
Yep.
think as long as you don't, I mean, go trendy with a pillow or something small.
Right,
But
that's what I say too.
if you are consistent with, just nothing, I don't know, nothing too trendy, I think you really can make most of what you have work
Work. Okay.
wherever.
Yeah.
Um, I love wood furniture.
Yeah.
It's a dark antique wood furniture,
Mhm.
wood piece, and I mean, I think there's a place for that. I think if maybe if you're dipping your toe into acquiring antiques, or shopping on marketplace or thrift stores, or places like that, a good chest. You can use a dresser anywhere.
Anywhere. Yeah.
I mean, we have a beautiful antique marble top piece that I mean, it was Victorian era. It originally had a top, and with a mirror, and then the two things to hold candles, because
Yeah. Yeah.
that, and I removed that. The listing on Marketplace had trolls all over it. And so it was a terrible photo, but I was like, I know how furniture is made, and I know that top comes off.
Yeah.
And so I got a great deal and got it back in my car. And that's now been in only 2 homes, but I mean, and I've now moved it around the house, trying to figure out where it's best.
Yeah, where it
And
can
so
go.
it's been in our bedroom, it's been in our living room, it's been in our dining room. It's beautiful wherever it is. So if you find those just timeless pieces, if you find something solidly built, check um, the drawer construction. If
Yeah.
they're like that, where the drawers come together, you're probably in good luck. I mean, in good shape,
Good shape.
because
Yeah.
I mean, that piece is probably 100 years old. It has survived. You know that it has longevity.
Yeah.
Whereas an IKEA piece, you're not going to be able to move with that. I've
No.
tried and early on, and those pieces don't,
They
they're
don't
good
move
for a
well.
time, but if you're going to move, it's not it's not.
Yeah, it's a set up once and you're done. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But when you and I spoke, what I really loved was that you had this great perspective and also real way of saying, like, we don't have to just throw out the baby with the bathwater every time here. And
Right.
like now you're in your more final destination and you've
Mhm.
got everything you love. And with that, you and I both know every once in a while something's going to come along where it just doesn't work.
Right.
And so letting go of things can be hard for people. I've had clients where it's really hard.
Mhm.
And I understand that because I've had to do it in my own house too. And I have found that like the more you fight it, it's just like it doesn't work, it
It's
doesn't
just
work.
not
So
gonna.
let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about how to let go the things that might not be serving you, that just simply when it comes right down to it, you just can't make them work, you can't make them fit, you can't make them work, whatever, and how to kind of let go in
Yeah.
that process when you do
Okay.
need to do that.
Yeah, we have a couple pieces that I have tried it in pretty much every room, and it just, it might just be too deep of a table, or
Mhm.
like a console table that's just too deep for a narrow townhouse,
Yeah.
or just we now in our garage, and I've purged a couple things, and I still have more to do, but yeah, just I think it's worth trying, being creative and where you might want to try to use it. But like once you've hit that point, like
Yeah.
this is not going to work, be okay with letting go. And I think sell it on marketplace, because then that'll be someone else's treasure. They will
Right.
have that story of finding it,
Yep.
or offer it to a friend or a family member. One book I listened to last year twice, as I was kind of going through this kind of purge era, was Marie Kondo's book,
Yeah.
and the life-changing magic of tidying up, and just the way she makes it okay to let things go. They've served their purpose for
Yep.
you,
Yep.
and now they can move on.
They
And
had their season.
right, and
Yeah.
even if it was something that was your grandmother's or your mom's, if it's not going to work for you, it's not it, you know my parents just downsized, and so my mom has handed off a couple things to me,
Me
and so
too.
if
Yeah.
she was okay with letting go because she had to, I
Yeah.
can be okay with letting go too. I don't need to be haunted
Mhm.
by this piece that I feel like I have to keep, because it's not doing
Yeah.
anyone a service. You
Right.
can let it go, let someone else find it, and have a
Right.
place of honor in their home.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard
No,
though.
I
I
just
know
wanted to talk about that because it comes up. I have all kinds of things that I talk to my clients about as far as options to deal with that.
Yeah,
And, there are some, but yeah, ultimately when things don't work, they just don't work.
yeah.
And, but you do such a good job of making so much work. So I really like that. Um, I wanted to chat about, you have this quote, which I think is so important because my audience, my clientele, they're busy families.
Hmm.
And I love that you said you don't have to put off having a beautiful home if you're moving or if you have kids. And I love that because I feel like so many people sacrifice for so long
Hmm.
and their home really doesn't fortify them the way it should
Right,
because they're having this excuse, well, I have kids, I have pets, I have whatever. It still can be nice, and
right.
it's a matter of how you do it. So, I wanted to chat about that a little because I think you also have a great attitude in that regard and how you handle, raising a family, but also having these really beautiful things, and some are precious and some are even fragile. And, you're not gonna not live without them. So, let's chat about that a little because I think the audience could really learn a lot from that because I think it's a common sentiment, like,
Right.
of why somebody can't have, like, the nice home they want.
Right,
Yeah.
completely. Well, I think, there's a couple different things. If you're buying pieces that are solid, they should stand up to rambunctious children. Um, and this wingback chair right behind me, I thrifted that a decade ago, and I had it reupholstered pink, and then now it's, a more subdued blue,
Right.
and my kids do jump on it. and it gets a little irritating sometimes, but I know it's solid,
Yeah.
and it has performance fabric on it.
Yep.
So when they get
Performance fabrics help
chocolate
a lot.
or whatever, I know I can clean it up. So that, that is helpful. I think also, I mean, within reason, I mean, so my youngest is 4 now. We didn't have, so my kids are 4, 6, and 8. And
Yeah.
so for a very long time, we did not have anything on the coffee table.
Mhm.
Just you got to pick your battles.
Right.
But you can decorate higher up things, and
Exactly.
then once you're, finally like, okay, maybe my kids are old enough to, for us to maybe explore possibly decorating a slightly lower level piece. Um, you have to teach them. They're not going to learn to not mess with breakable things unless they are exposed to that experience. And
And
so
understand.
we
Yeah.
have, we would start out, even when they were little, we would have a console table that would have maybe a little vase or a picture frame that has glass on it, or something like that, where it's not right in their play area,
Right.
but they are passing by it and they're seeing it. And so then maybe 2 years ago, or a year ago, I was finally able to put something on the coffee table. And I mean, my coasters still get moved all the time. They've learned how to gently lift a lid of a ginger jar if they
Right.
want to look inside it. I mean, even when I was growing up, and when I was raising little children, when you would decorate a Christmas tree or something, to be able to say like it's completely off limits is very hard for a child. But if they had the one finger rule, like they could touch an ornament with one finger,
Right.
that way they can't grab it.
Right.
So just reinforcing, this is our home. We want this to be a beautiful home, and we want to be proud of our home. We have to treat things with respect,
Right. Right.
within reason. You're not going to
Of
put something
course.
crazy breakable at a low level, but
Yeah.
you have to train them and like build on that.
Yeah, and like I say, so it's like the sacrifices are maybe you don't have the glass coffee table you want,
Right.
but you substitute an upholstered ottoman or
Right.
so you can still have something beautiful. I even had a client recently, there's 2 lamps in her living room and they were always ceramic and she has 2 boys and they kept getting knocked over. And when those get knocked over, they break.
Right.
And she's like, "But we really need some nice lamps." So I said, "Well, why don't we do a non-breakable material?" And
Hmm.
we did like a woven jute raffia
Yeah.
base. So when it
Right.
knocks over, it's not going to crack into smithereens. So
Right.
you can have beautiful things. I think it's about choosing materials, fabrics now, like you mentioned with performance. I mean,
Hmm.
growing up, we didn't even have that option. Or, our mothers didn't have that option, but performance fabrics go a long way
Right.
on furniture.
Or
And then
kind of a
combine
busy
it
fabric,
with that.
or kind of a busy fabric, like we right
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
my
Like a print. Yes.
it's an ECAT
Yep.
table or sofa that we've had for years, and that has withstood a lot. And that
Yeah.
is not performance fabric, but because it's maybe a little busier, a little bolder, like a
Right.
pretty floral or something like that, it'll
Right.
camouflage a lot of sins.
So to me, it's like you don't have to forego your home. You have to just think about it a little differently.
Right.
And then combining with, especially once your kids get older, to teach them certain things when they're old enough to learn. We're
Right.
going to touch that with just gently one finger, or this is how we lift the lid of this, or whatever. And that's all really good. But I just like your attitude about it because I think it's an important one to have where it's like, well, it doesn't mean we're going to live without furniture and without things because we have kids.
Right.
A, we can switch out materials, and B, we can teach children how to live in a home, which,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
so yeah, I think that was really cool.
Thank you.
Um, the next thing I wanted to chat with you about was I think it's because you had mentioned to me this is kind of like your landing place where you are now.
Mhm.
Um, and it goes back to a little to what we talked about, but already, but I think that it seems like you've incorporated just about everything you've collected when we think about all the different locations you've been in along the way and everything that you've kind of received along the way. They are all now kind of in harmony in this new home, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, every piece has a story, like, this coffee table behind me, I've thrifted at when we lived here, and I painted it right before we moved. I mean, this sofa, I found it on the side of the road at my parents' house. Our neighbor was selling a house, and the lady had lived in the house since the 60s and had not changed out her furniture. So I got it
Wow.
for free, and I had it redone. And I mean, that was from Georgia. And then I have this piece next to me that I found from Kansas.
Yeah.
And so everything just, tells a story, but it's a solid piece that I know I'm not going to tire of. If if it caught my eye and it's 80 years old, like, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's not going to go out of style. And I think if I think it's good to be kind of, if you want to start getting into thrifting or antiquing or things like that, just learning to be a student and kind of learning the styles, or
Yes.
um, just learning a bit about it's so good to always just be soaking up knowledge, whatever
Yes.
whatever it is. And that way, if you happen to find something at a thrift store, you're like, oh, I know that brand of faux bamboo furniture from the 60s.
Right.
um, and I think you can learn a lot looking on Facebook Marketplace, from following people on Instagram that
Yep.
have a passion for thrifting. Even, certain books. I love a good coffee table book, and I read them cover to cover, just studying the designers, how they use an old piece. And then
Yep.
that will give you an idea of, oh, I have a spot that's similar to that, and I've been struggling with it. Maybe I need something like this. I'm going to add this to my list to hopefully find one day. And when you have your eyes open and you have a list, I mean,
Yeah.
you'll come across it one day. I get a lot of messages anytime I share my thrifting stuff,
Yeah.
people saying, oh, you have the best luck. But I mean, what they don't see is that I strike out all the time. You
Sure.
just have to be persistent.
Yes.
And I mean, and things turn over every week, every day.
Yep.
And so you just have to kind of pick your day that you're going to go make the rounds if you have the time. And um, eventually you'll strike gold.
Yeah, you do. You have to keep at it, and I had a few days where I definitely struck out. There were some vintage things I was looking for this
Mhm.
project I was doing, and then I went back another day and I like struck gold and I found like
Yeah.
5 of the things. And then even for fashion, there's a great new consignment shop that opened near me, and a couple times in a row I was like, "Meh." And then I went in the other day and I found like 3 things that I absolutely adored.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so excited." So, yeah, it happens with fashion too, and on your blog, I'll mention to people you also cover fashion.
Mhm.
So mention that too. We just wanted to talk about the home stuff today, but I love the fact that, you had said you're kind of in this new place, and you're not in a position where you have to go out and buy everything new. It's not like you're
Right.
sitting in an empty house, and it's because you've curated over the years
Right.
these things that now you're going to just incorporate in this new home, which I think is so great, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
And it's
you're
very
right.
sustainable too.
Yeah, I mean, if you decide to put off anything nice when you have children, or if you're moving, then I mean, once you're finally past that phase, are you starting over from scratch? Because that's really hard,
Yeah.
and even I mean, expensive and intimidating,
Yeah,
and I mean, it's hard for a designer to start from scratch for a room. Like,
totally.
imagine like a just a normal person. And so if you have these pieces that can be your foundation, it's totally fine if you need to get a new sofa, or something to fit this particular wall in your home that you have now. But to at least have the background and core pieces that
Yep, I agree.
um and I think, what's the saying, like, cry once, or you spend a lot of money and you only cry once, whereas if you buy something cheap, you're going to cry more than once, because I
Yeah.
mean, I am totally getting that quote wrong.
But I know I get the gist of what you're
But
saying. It's like, yeah,
you're going
let's
to
try
end
to
up
do it
replacing it.
once and have it last
Yeah.
versus like, and I'll tell my clients that too, like you can just keep making mistakes over and over. And sometimes if you hire a designer and they can be like, just buy this sofa and like you'll
Yeah.
just keep it for 20 years. It's
Yeah.
like the time you spent paying for the designer, paying for the sofa, it's probably less than all those mistakes you made. So
Right.
you kind of have to look at it with a more long game approach,
Yeah, for sure.
which you've certainly done, and it's worked really well for you. And so I thought that was such just a good message to relay to people that are moving. Because the other thing when people are moving too, especially from city to suburbs, they're going from much smaller square footage to bigger. So I
Right.
think they feel this rush of like, oh my God, I'm gonna have so many empty rooms and I got to get it done. And like you don't want to be hasty either,
Right.
because and you don't want to just fill it for the sake of filling it.
Hmm.
Sort of take your time and be a little bit more methodical. And so I think that's worked well for you. And I think it landed you with, like we said in the beginning, and I preach this all the time, like you don't want to be ordinary and look like page 4 of the Pottery Barn catalog. And now with social media, you see all these images on TikTok and everyone has the same foyer table with the same mirror and the same
Hmm.
planter. And it makes me crazy because it's
Yeah.
like, it's not unattractive in any way. It works from a design standpoint, but like 8 million people have it. It's like the
Right.
Stanley Cup of foyers. And it's like, do you want your home to be the Stanley Cup of homes?
Right.
I hope not, you know. So I think on top of everything else you've done, it makes it stand out with a signature of you and your family. So I
Thank you.
love I love all that. So I think it's been a great chat. If I left anything out, let me know, and we can cover it. But I'd love to close the show by just any other tips that we haven't touched on. You can give them, and if not, it's fine. But let people know the best place to find you. You can state like your website, your Instagram handle, wherever you're located, and then we're going to put that all in the show notes, Katie, so it links
Okay.
right to it. And
Oh,
so for
great.
the audience, you can link right to Katie, and I'll be tagging her on all the social media. So follow my social media and hers, and yeah, she can get tagged.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I think just my biggest tip, and I think it's kind of been the running theme throughout this whole interview, is just don't rush decorating.
Mm,
You know, it's okay to sit and wait until you find something that speaks to you.
mhm.
It doesn't have to be perfect immediately, and it's okay to take your time. The most beautiful homes have been curated over time.
Yeah.
It's not an instantaneous thing. And so right now, I mean, I'm kind of at the place now where I'm really not looking for any furniture, but I'm looking for art.
Mm,
And I mean, I could easily go to Home Goods or something like that, but I it could, because I know I need to fill certain walls, but it
yeah.
is so much more interesting if you slowly find a piece like I've found two Audubon prints, like beautifully framed Audubon prints
Yeah.
that perfectly fit the certain spots in our room.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad I didn't rush it, because what I ended up finding was a lot more unique. And
Yes.
so, be it art or furniture or little knickknacks. I mean, it's easy to rush it, and that's probably our nature, is to rush it. And I love a good Home Goods fix. But if you can slow down, you will find that you have built yourself a home that feels like you. It tells a story, and it's it's all the best. So
It's yours. Yeah. Another tip for art is I find if you tap into any local artists, and so if you look at local artists and see some things you like and supporting local art, and they usually have a story, they'll say,
yeah,
I
oh,
painted
that's a
this
great
year,
idea.
whatever. And like, that's a nice way. I usually tell my clients to kind of get their toe in the water. Art doesn't have to be $1 million.
Right.
And local artists have all different price ranges depending on if you get a print from them or whatever. So in my own collection, I've done that. And I advise people to do that. Reach out to your local artists first. A lot of them will have studios, or they'll show up at the local fairs and things
Yeah.
like that where you can see their work. Some of them have Etsy shops or whatnot, but that's a nice way too.
Yeah,
And like,
that is
yeah, so
that's a
that's
great
good.
idea.
No, it's all good. And I think it's just nice because with the way you do everything, I feel like you're left at the end with this like beautiful signature on where you
Yeah.
live. That's kind of how I
Yes.
describe it.
Exactly. So as far as my links go, my website is stripesandwhimsy.com.
Okay.
My Instagram is at Stripes and Whimsy. I'm on Stripes and Whimsy on Pinterest and on
Okay.
Facebook, and on LTK if you're looking for classic, timeless, practical mom outfits, and home decor there as well. But
Yeah, that's right. Katie has links on her LTK shop too, and they're great.
yeah,
So we definitely want to check that out. Well, I would be remiss by not saying thank you for your service and your whole family,
thank
by
you.
the way, because you have a military family. And so I would like to thank everybody for their service, as well as thanking you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you. This was so fun. It was such an honor. Thank you.
This was great. So we will connect soon, and I'll talk to you soon, Katie. Thank you.
Okay, bye.